Blinkist is the app that helps you become a more well-rounded person by letting you read or listen to an entire nonfiction book in just 15 minutes. You can try it for free and get 25% off a subscription by going to Blinkist.com/David Pakman.
Welcome to the David Pakman Show. I am Jesse Dollamore, sitting in for David while he is luxuriating on vacation. Today in America, especially related to COVID, there are two camps of people. You have the camp that is concerned for their fellow citizens and want to stop the onslaught of the virus that has resulted in the deaths of over 600,000 Americans and millions worldwide. And the other camp is comprised of people who are colluding against the first camp. Fortunately, we seem, if you're watching this and you're of like mind, we're on the first team. And fortunately now we have a government that is standing in the gap for those most in need relative to protection. I hold in my hand here a memorandum for all Department of Defense employees written by Lloyd Austin, former general and now Secretary of Defense. And he is mandating, with the president's approval, seeking President Biden's approval to have all military personnel and Department of Defense employees vaccinated by mid-September. I'm going to read a little bit from this memorandum because I believe it's important to give context of the words of the leaders. Over the last week, I have consulted closely with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the secretaries of the military departments, the service chiefs, and medical professionals. I appreciate greatly the advice and counsel they provided. Based on these consultations and on additional discussions with leaders of the White House COVID task force, I want you to know that I will seek the president's approval to make the vaccines mandatory no later than mid-September or immediately upon the U.S. Food and Drug Administration licensure, whichever comes first. By way of expectation, public reporting suggests that the Pfizer vaccine could achieve full FDA licensure early next month. To defend this nation, we need a healthy and ready force. I strongly encourage all DoD military and civilian personnel, as well as contractor personnel, to get vaccinated now and for military service members to not wait for the mandate. All FDA-authorized COVID-19 vaccines are safe, highly effective. They will protect you and your family. They will protect your unit, your ship, and your coworkers, and they will ensure we remain the most lethal and ready force in the world. Now, many of you probably have no idea who I am, but for the edification of those who don't know, I served in the United States Marine Corps for many years. And there is sure to be some backlash among some of the more right-wing nutters in the military. And rest assured, there are many of them. When I was in the Marine Corps, they did this DNA testing where they took a drop of blood, and there was an outcry from many acting as though there was a conspiracy afoot. And the same thing is going to happen here. Now, what I find interesting is the fact that the same people in the camp who talk about the military being too sensitive and being too woke are the same that are going to act like this is imposing some kind of a problem on the military members, who are largely dutiful people who care about their oath to support and defend the Constitution, who care about their country, who care about their neighbors. That's not the case with everybody, but it matters that our military get vaccinated, not just for the communities in which they live, but so we have a viable, ready force in case something does happen where they need to be deployed. Now, President Biden released a statement, and in part he said, I strongly support Secretary Austin's message to the force today on the Department of Defense's plan to add the COVID-19 vaccine to the list of required vaccinations for our service members not later than mid-September. Secretary Austin and I share an unshakable commitment to making sure our troops have every tool they need to do their jobs as safely as possible. These vaccines will save lives. That's what this is about. Saving lives. This is about protecting lives. And in a not so abstract way, isn't that indeed what the military is there for? To protect lives. To care for the citizenry of this country. To not be vaccinated goes against that ethos. Which brings us to the other side, the other camp in Republicans, who, in an effort to own the libs, which seems to be their only function, they are pushing back against every measure imaginable to beat back the virus. Whether that be mask mandates, whether that be vaccines, whether that be social distancing, whether that be shutdowns, whatever effect they had on the economy, at every step, they push back. Enter Josh Feuerstein, another one of these evangelical nutterbutters who screams and yells and freaks out on stage to their audience, their congregation. Listen, again, get a little personal since most people don't know who I am. I grew up a conservative Republican. I was indoctrinated in an evangelical congregation for all of my childhood. I revered characters like Josh Feuerstein, like Greg Locke, who David talked about a few days ago. These are dangerous charlatans. Watch this clip from Josh Feuerstein, and then we're going to talk about it.
Listen to me. I understand, and let me speak now to the cameras around the world, to every pastor that's watching this broadcast, to every Christian that has cowered in your home. I realize that for this last year that maybe you've been fed fear and fear and fear, but the Bible says that God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. You have a sound mind. You don't have to wear the mask. You got Jesus. You don't need the vaccine. You got Jesus.
So I guess we're to believe that Josh Feuerstein, who, much like me, could use a few sit-ups in his life, that he's not vaccinated for anything. Apparently he doesn't have the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine. He's probably not been vaccinated for polio, right? It's only this vaccine that's the problem, because it's the culture war du jour for conservatives and grifters just like him, who ostensibly has a charge to protect his flock. He is doing a disservice, not just to the people in that audience who look up to him and admire him. He is doing a disservice to the country at large as he appears on Real America's Voice. Like they're part of real America, and those of us who disagree are not in real America. This is all part and parcel, pattern and practice with what is taking place right now in the headlines. Farron talked about over the last couple days, a couple of guys. Dick Farrell, the Newsmax and Florida radio host, who said not to get vaccinated, who called COVID a hoax, who's now dead from COVID. H. Scott Apley, a Republican leader in the Republican Party in Texas, advertised a mask burning party and said, boy, I wish I could live where you guys are. I'd love to be a part of that. He died on Wednesday. In an effort to own the libs, to prove their points, they're acting as they always do about most issues of import. And that is, until it passes beyond their nose, like a conservative who is all against gay rights until they have a gay kid. The same thing is happening, because the two gentlemen that I just talked about, that have been talked about more in length by Farron the last few days, Their families are admonishing everyone, please get the vaccine. COVID is real. COVID is a killer. And the problem that we face right now is not just from local city councilmen in Texas or Newsmax radio hosts. It's with prominent governors in the Republican Party like Ron DeSantis right now, who just today announced he's threatening to cut the pay, suspend the pay of school districts, of teachers, educators, superintendents, if they enforce a mask mandate protecting children. This headline from CBS 4 Miami. Governor Ron DeSantis' office, State Education Board could withhold salaries of superintendents, school board members who implement mask mandates. Here's the word from Ron DeSantis, someone who is not protecting children. As we see COVID rates rise among children, hospitalization rise among children, Ron DeSantis is making it a policy objective to not protect the least among us, the most vulnerable among us. His statement: with respect to enforcing any financial consequences for non-compliance of state law regarding these rules and ultimately the rights of parents to make decisions about their children's education and healthcare decisions, it would be the goal of the State Board of Education to narrowly tailor any financial consequences to the offense committed. For example, the State Board of Education could move to withhold the salary of the district superintendent or school board members as a narrowly tailored means to address the decision makers who led to the violation of the law. Who led to the violation of the law, but also led to the protection of children. He continues, education funding is intended to benefit students first and foremost. Ron DeSantis said it with his own mouth here, by his own pen or someone in his office, that education funding is intended to benefit students first and foremost. And that doesn't just mean benefiting them and their actual education, but keeping them safe in the place where they are educated. Just recently on Meet the Press with Chuck Todd, the president of the second largest teachers union decided they're going to reverse course and they're going to support a COVID vaccine mandate because of that very thing, protecting children. Randy Weingarten, the president of the American Federation of Teachers, on with Meet the Press. Watch this.
But I do think that the circumstances have changed and that vaccination is a community responsibility, and it weighs really heavily on me that kids under 12 can't get vaccinated. And so I very rarely, separate my personal views from, where I am as a leader of the union, but I have really watched, particularly in Florida and Missouri. I was in St. Louis yesterday. Right. I was in Florida on Saturday. And you just see this, and we have to counter. Look, you said it earlier. We have to counter the misinformation. We have to this is a public health crisis, and the politics are infecting it. But I felt the need, as to bring people together and to stand up and say this as a matter of personal conscience.
Pointedly stated. Circumstances have changed, and this is it weighs really heavily on me that kids under 12 can't get vaccinated. It should weigh heavily on every single person in America, educator or not, pastor or not, politician or not, stupid commentator or not. People are dying. Our neighbors are dying. In our lifetime, unless you're 100 years old, we've not seen something rip through our society like this. Which team are you going to be on? The team that cares or the team that colludes against the team that cares?
What if you could read 10 books in just one sitting? That's exactly what one of my favorite apps lets you do. It's called Blinkist, and what they do is take thousands of popular nonfiction books. They condense them down into text or audio that you can consume in 15 minutes. Blinkist makes sure that you're getting all of the important core insights from each book. So it's perfect for exploring a book you otherwise wouldn't have time for. If there's a full book you're thinking about buying, you can use Blinkist to get a sample first. Just think how much you can enrich yourself by being able to soak up an entire nonfiction book in just 15 minutes. I recently read A Brief History of Time, of course, by the great Stephen Hawking. This is a book that I have been aware of for so long, and other things got in the way, and it was fantastic to check it out on Blinkist. Blinkist has books on politics, philosophy, science. They have 27 different nonfiction categories, and a subscription is only about $8 a month. And you get the entire library. But you can try it totally free and get 25% off a subscription when you go to Blinkist.com/David Pakman. I've put the link right underneath this video.
Something I've been talking about for certainly as long as Donald Trump has been on the scene, actively involved in politics, is the rise of authoritarianism. The risk of tyranny that we're running by allowing these people in power. Along with authoritarianism is also white supremacy and white nationalism and just outright racism. And the chief purveyor in the United States right now of this kind of rhetoric, and what makes it most dangerous is because he dresses up in a suit and goes on Fox News every single night and has the most popular cable news show in the history of cable news, Tucker Carlson. Well, this last week, Tucker Carlson has been in Hungary giving Viktor Orban, who is a wild authoritarian in the mold of Donald Trump. Steve Bannon has called Viktor Orban Trump before Trump was Trump, something like that. And I want to play a little audio or video and audio of a speech that Tucker Carlson is giving in Hungary, knowing that this speech is not for people in Budapest. This speech is for people back home. This speech is for Americans to hear, and he is signaling something. Let's take a look.
Looking at these buildings, which move me, not simply because they're old and some have bullet holes, which in my view are a very useful reminder. I wish I lived in a city full of bullet holes in the building.
We're going to stop it right there. And the reason we're going to stop it right there, because this is laughable. This is the same man who whined and complained about having to cower in his house while protesters protested outside. And he is in fear, whining. Yet, I wish I lived in a town where there were bullet holes in buildings. As he romanticizes this. Disgusting.
Because every morning you look at them and you think to yourself, it could be really bad. Because it's been really bad. There's a lot at stake. Make wise, sober, long-term decisions, or else you could wind up with more bullet holes. It's true. It's true.
It's true. It's true. Tough guy, strong man Tucker Carlson, never served one single minute in the military, in uniform, has never put his life in harm's way, has never put his life in danger for any cause. And he stands there hugging himself, talking about how he wishes he lived in a city with bullet holes in the buildings.
And if I would level, and I could spend all day leveling very accurate accusations against the American foreign policy establishment, but the main one would be that they have no sense of how bad things can get. And this is the bad side of the upside of America. America's an optimistic country, always has been. Came from all around the world, showed up in this mostly untouched continent with the most fertile farmland in the world and an ocean to separate us from the lunatics. And it gave us the feeling that anything is possible and everything has been possible. And I'll never stop being grateful for that or proud of it. But the downside to that, the flip side, the obverse, the other side of the coin, as you say in Hungary, is that Americans have no sense of how bad things can get. That it actually could be a lot worse. Our physical isolation cuts us off from the history of the rest of the world. There's not a passion to study what happened before in a place that you're building anew, right? Right. Yeah. So we don't have a sense of that. So I love your bullet holes. Let me just say, I'm probably the only visitor to your nation who's complimented your small arms and artillery scars. But here's what I like more about the landscape of Hungary, a few Soviet remnants notwithstanding. It's pretty. It is pretty. The buildings are pretty. The architecture uplifts.
Architectural critic Tucker Carlson. So listen, what Tucker Carlson, I believe, is doing here is romanticizing the bullets in the building. In the direct aftermath of an attempted overthrow of the United States government, a violent insurrection that took the lives of Americans, an attempted overturning of a free and fair election, Tucker Carlson sits here on foreign soil under the protection of an authoritarian goon named Viktor Orban and says these things, criticizes the United States foreign policy. It has been practice for presidents to tread lightly, even foreign dignitaries. You don't criticize your country while away. Even when Obama made what conservatives call the apology tour, he did not do that. They criticized anything that they could perceive as a criticism of the United States, even when there wasn't one. And the script has flipped now. We have Tucker Carlson doing that very thing and being roundly applauded by it by conservatives. And doing this, romanticizing, signaling to the insurrectionists while denying that an insurrection took place. We all witnessed with our eyes what took place, what happened. With horror, if you are a reasonable person, you witnessed it. And now we're being told the sky is green, not blue. That's not what happened. This is calculated. On the other side of this, I want to read a little bit from this Daily Beast op-ed that is in line with the behavior of Tucker Carlson as the ringleader of the white nationalist movement in America. They've been talking about the great replacement theory for months and months and months. It's no longer a secret. It's no longer a dog whistle. They are fully embracing as a party the great replacement theory, and along with it, white genocide, they call it. They whine about birth rates. They complain about immigration, about allowing refugees to come from a desperate situation in their homelands to the land of promise, the land of opportunity. They complain about this. These are conspiracy theories and complaints that have been made for a long time by individuals like the Nazi face seen punched round the world, Richard Spencer, or David Duke, or Steve Bannon, or Stephen Miller. The list is long. Paul Gosar, Steve Scalise, who has said that he's just like David Duke without all the baggage. This is the modern Republican Party. Donald Trump is the leader of this Republican Party. So I want to read from this article because there are some great nuggets in here that people in America need to wake up to. What did Orban do that makes him a model worth emulating for conservatives in the United States? He transformed Hungary's once promising democracy into a one-party state where he filled the government and judiciary with political apparatchiks, attacked the press and political opponents, abused his power to enrich himself and his cronies, promoted anti-Semitic conspiracy theories against George Soros, and constructed a 109-mile high-tech razor wire border fence with Serbia. Sound familiar? If I had said, what did Donald Trump do that makes him a model worth emulating, and then finished it off, no one, except for the part of the border with Serbia, no one would bat an eye. because the Republican Party is now full-on authoritarian. They're not authoritarian light. They're anti-democratic. They're anti-American. Continuing on, Orban mobilized his base into giving up their freedoms by promising he will protect them and their Hungarian heritage from Muslims, refugees, and immigrants of color, and protect them from what he says are political forces in Europe who want a replacement of population for ideological or other reasons. Instead, he says, we Hungarians have a different way of thinking. Instead of just numbers, we want Hungarian children. Migration for us is surrender. And Tucker Carlson takes to his Fox News program and does a week-long commercial for this individual, as though he is a beacon of what leadership, political and otherwise, should look like in the world. This is dangerous. It's dangerous because it is ushering in a new wave of thinkers, of intellectuals, who will look at this as the new way forward. Viktor Orban is not that new way forward. It is reactionary. It is regressive. It is the opposite of the things that we should strive for in America. Progressive values, acceptance, diversity, caring for our fellow citizens, whether they be citizens of the United States or citizens of the world who are reaching out in need. And Tucker Carlson turns his back on that idea. Disgusting.
Don't forget that the best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time, and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpakman.com and use the coupon code BETTER21 for a huge discount. Joinpakman.com.
You know, there are certain things that are guaranteed. One of those things is Republican hypocrisy. Over the course of the last several decades, it has become crystal clear in the minds of anybody who's paid attention that Republicans love to talk a big game when Democrats are in control about budgets. They whine and cry from the rooftops, how are we going to pay for that? And it's not an altogether unreasonable question if asked in good faith. But during the presidency of Donald Trump, an extra $7 trillion was added to the national debt while we were in the midst of economic boom times. $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion deficits every year, even when things were great. When we should be squirreling away money for a rainy day, preparing for a time when there would be an economic downturn, we were letting the rich off the fox into the hen house. The rich, all kinds of tax cuts, adding to the national debt. Well, now that Democrats are in charge, there are several proposals that they're trying to make, that they're forwarding in hopes that Christian Sinema and Joe Manchin won't get in the way. This New York Times article, Senate Democrats begin $3.5 trillion push for big, bold social change. A Senate budget blueprint, which Democrats hope to pass this week, would ease passage of legislation that would mark the biggest expansion of the social safety net in nearly 60 years. And this is good news, especially in the state that we find ourselves in, COVID. People on the brink of financial collapse. Millions and millions of Americans almost ready to be evicted from their domiciles because they cannot pay their rent. People are in crisis. Study after study after study over the course of the last few years have indicated that a large percentage of Americans could not withstand an unexpected $400 charge expense. Things aren't great for millions of Americans, and we need to update how we take care of those in need. Reading from this article, Democrats formally began their push on Monday for the most significant expansion of the nation's social safety net since the Great Society of the 1960s, unveiling a budget blueprint that would spend $3.5 trillion on healthcare, child and elder care, education, and climate change. The budget resolution, which the Senate Democrats hope to pass by the end of this week, would allow the caucus to piece together social policy legislation this fall, paid for by raising taxes on the wealthy, large inheritances, and corporations. Should all 50 senators who caucus with Democrats hold together, the measure could pass the Senate without a Republican vote, nullifying the filibuster threat. Democrats plan to take up the measure as soon as the Senate approves a separate $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill, which, by the way, is a far cry from the multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure proposal that Biden wanted. Why? One, because of the recalcitrant Joe Manchin, the aforementioned Joe Manchin, but also because Republicans, they're not in the business of getting things done. They're in the business of opposition. The $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill, which is scheduled for a vote at 11 a.m. Tuesday. Together, the measures could secure virtually all of President Biden's $4 trillion economic agenda, rebuilding the nation's roads, bridges, rail lines, water systems, and electricity grid, while expanding public education, social welfare, and health care, and remaking the federal tax code. That is important. Democrats are hard at work, bobbing and weaving and dodging the arrows of Republicans who aren't in the business of progress. And Democrats are trying to get something done for the American people, to update our country, to refresh the way we do things. Because if this is the biggest expansion of a social safety net in nearly 60 years, what are we doing? If we're allowing Republicans to completely control the narrative, like we have for a generation on the minimum wage, what are we doing? If we want to claim we live in modernity, we need to start acting like it. We need to start leading like it. We need to start legislating like it. If the Congress can make all kinds of exceptions because of COVID to update their voting proxy rules, we certainly can do that surrounding this. And allowing Republicans to get in the way, especially where it relates to the filibuster, isn't leadership. If you ask me, it's cowardice. Another item that Democrats are trying to get done here falls on the mighty shoulders of Elizabeth Warren. Another New York Times article, Elizabeth Warren will propose a minimum tax on the nation's richest companies. Now, this comes on the heels of reporting from several years ago where there were over 90 companies of the largest corporations in America that paid zero income tax. Zero. John Deere, zero. Amazon, zero. This comes on the heels of the reporting from just a few months ago from ProPublica of all of the billionaires who didn't pay any tax. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, perennial liberal, advocate for raising taxes on the wealthy. He didn't pay very much. Reading from this article, Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts and her allies will propose a minimum tax on the profits of the nation's richest companies, regardless of what they say they owe the government. as part of the Democrats' $3.5 trillion economic and social policy package. Ms. Warren's so-called real corporate profits tax was a key part of her presidential campaign, and she has enlisted Senator Angus King, the Maine independent, to help press her case that profitable companies should be taxed regardless of loopholes and maneuvers that have allowed many of them to avoid federal corporate income taxes altogether. What does it say about our system, the morality of our system, that we demonize those who are getting ready to be evicted from their houses? We demonize the unhoused. And we lift up as paragons, as examples of how to live, billionaires who enjoy outrageous wealth, unimaginable wealth, who pay nothing into the system. Instead, they live off loans using stock as collateral, and then that loan ends up being a liability that they actually can get a tax break from. It is immoral. I'm not necessarily opposed to billionaires. I am opposed to a system that allows them to exist with impunity. Continuing on here, the measure would require the most profitable companies to pay a 7% tax on the earnings they report to investors, known as their annual book value, above $100 million. By taxing the earnings reported to investors, not to the Internal Revenue Service, Democrats would be hitting earnings that companies like to maximize, not the earnings they try hard to diminish for tax purposes. And this is what Elizabeth Warren had to say about this. During the presidential campaign, Joe Biden and I disagreed on some tax policies, but there was one thing we strongly agreed on. Corporations shouldn't be able to tell shareholders they were making huge profits, then tell the IRS they made nothing in profits. Truer words. When Jeff Bezos and his cadre of billionaire pals benefit from a system that we have that has made them what they are. Of course, there was hard work that went into it. I'm not saying that doesn't play a role. But luck plays an outsized role in the success of people like this. It's not just their ingenuity. There are a million points of data that lead to their success. What's the phrase about preparation and luck when combined? Some nonsense saying. Fortune favors the well-prepared or whatever. All of that is true, but without luck and without the sweat and the tears and the blood and the sacrifice of people who work for these corporations, they would have nothing. And to enjoy the spoils of everything that is benefiting them that this country offers, and then to pay zero in tax, whether you be a corporation or whether you be an individual like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. It is immoral, it is reprehensible, and it needs to be legislated. We need people on Capitol Hill, elected representatives. That is, after all, what they do. They represent us, and they need to do more for us, and not the people who make major payments to their PACs, major contributions to their political campaigns. That is what's most important. We, the people, not we, the corporation.
If you value what we do at The David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind-the-scenes videos, the Daily Bonus Show, the commercial-free Daily Show, as well as special discounts on merch, including hats, hoodies, mugs, and t-shirts. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show.
The number of ways that the Republican Party differs from the Democratic Party, numerous. myriad ways. And I'm not just talking about policy. I'm not talking about economic policies that are vastly different relative to taxation or just monetary policy in general. I'm not talking about social issues and the respect and regard we have for our fellow human beings, the more humanist outlook. I'm not talking about that. Right now, I'm talking specifically about the manner with which we hold our leaders accountable, or in the way of the Republicans, the manner in which they do not. Enter Andrew Cuomo. Last week, Letitia James, the New York State Attorney General, concluded a lengthy investigation into the behavior, the conduct of Governor Andrew Cuomo. And they found that he has acted inappropriately, possibly criminally, related to female staffers. That went beyond locker room talk, like Republicans like to call it. He actually reached under women's blouses and assaulted them. Now, aides are running for the hills. They are quitting en masse. He is a man unto himself. He is an island unto himself. He's losing support of longtime union leaders. Black political leaders in New York are abandoning him. He is toxic. Even his brother is under fire. Melissa DeRosa, this is from CNN, Cuomo top aide Melissa DeRosa resigns as governor faces potential impeachment. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's top aide, Melissa DeRosa, resigned late Sunday, less than a week after the release of a report from the state attorney general that found Cuomo sexually harassed 11 women. Quote, "It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve the people of New York for the past 10 years. New Yorkers' resilience, strength, and optimism through the most difficult times has inspired me every day." DeRosa, secretary to the governor, said in a statement obtained by CNN. Nancy Pelosi has called for his resignation. Chuck Schumer, fellow New Yorker, has also called. Not just them, though. Here's Joe Biden, when asked about it, also saying he should resign.
Given back in March, you said that if the investigation confirmed the allegations against Governor Cuomo, then he should resign. So will you now call on him to resign, given the investigator said the 11 women were credible?
I stand by that statement.
Are you now calling on him to resign?
Yes.
And if he doesn't resign, do you believe he should be impeached and removed from office?
Let's take one thing at a time here. I think he should resign. I understand that the state legislature may decide to impeach. I don't know that for a fact. I've not read all that data.
And he's using a photo of you embracing him in his self-defense to say that these are commonplace kind of embraces that he made and the allegations against him. Do you condone that?
Look, I'm not going to fly-spec this. I am sure there are some embraces that were totally innocent. But apparently the Attorney General decided there were things that weren't.
So at this point, impeachment proceedings seem unavoidable. Carl Heastie is the Speaker of the New York State Assembly. And they have initiated an investigation, impeachment inquiry. If I'm a betting man, sometimes I am, I would say that it is, as I just mentioned, it's unavoidable. It's going to happen, and he will be removed. There's actually been sheriff's offices contacted, or at least one, where there very well could be criminal charges brought against current, still, Governor Andrew Cuomo. Here's Carl Heastie discussing the matter at a press conference.
Attorney General's task completed. The Assembly is working to expeditiously conclude our investigation, which covers a broad range of issues, so that we can bring this sad chapter of our state's history to a conclusion. As I stated last week, the governor has clearly lost the confidence of the majority members of the New York State Assembly. The Attorney General's report lays out in painful detail the many instances and ways in which he reportedly harassed and created a hostile work environment for the employees of the executive chamber and others he came in contact with. I'm heartbroken, Let me be clear, no one should have to endure the type of behavior detailed in the Attorney General's report. We are at a historic moment in our state's modern history. For the first time in more than 100 years, the Assembly is undertaking an impeachment investigation of a sitting governor. Chairman Levine, the members of the Judiciary Committee, and my majority colleagues understand the gravity of the situation that we find ourselves in today. Future generations will look to us and how we conducted ourselves in this moment. In order to ensure due process, which is embedded in our system, we've asked for all evidence, unredacted and unfiltered, used by the Attorney General's investigators to reach their conclusions. The process to begin receiving that information did not begin until Saturday evening. We have not yet received all of it. We received a lot, but not all of it. We've also asked the governor to submit any relevant evidence he may have by Friday, August 13th. Our goal is now to bring this matter to a conclusion with all due haste, no pun intended. The Judiciary Committee has made progress on the issues they have been investigating, and to provide an update on those issues, our schedule, and the progress of the overall investigation, I will now turn to the chair of our Judiciary Committee, Charles Levine.
Now, this is in stark contrast to how Republicans fail to hold their own accountable. We witnessed Marjorie Taylor Greene saying abhorrent, racist, xenophobic things and being able to keep her committees if it were up to Republicans. It was Democrats who had to take it upon themselves to vote her off of her committees. She went on to say nonsense and then apologize about comparing the masks to the Holocaust, you may remember, and then gave a little press conference. I just learned about the Holocaust. Nonsense. Matt Gaetz, he's in hot water for unspeakable crimes, and still nothing. He still sits on the Judiciary Committee. Donald Trump, the twice impeached president, twice acquitted by Republicans, clear crimes, clear outlining of obstruction of justice in the Mueller report. Nothing. Incited an attempted overthrow of the United States government and an attempted overturning of a free and fair election through means not just violent insurrection, but also using the mechanism, the wheels and gears of government that were at his disposal by using the DOJ as a cudgel to attempt his insurrection. The just say it was fraudulent and I'll take care of the rest. And how do Republicans hold themselves accountable? They don't. Here's Chuck Grassley, the venerable octogenarian who worked, he was the senator when I worked for the Senate many years ago. He's been there forever. This is him waxing excuse-making about why Donald Trump had every right to try to subvert the Constitution and attempt to overthrow the government. Watch this, as he would call it, cockamamie reasoning.
The president has every right to discuss ideas and strategies with his closest advisors. The president, whether that president is Democrat or Republican, should feel unrestrained to bring ideas to his closest staff for robust discussion. Eventually, the facts will come out, and Trump will have to address them, good or bad, depending on the facts at hand. However, the essential question that should be asked, what was the final decision? And that is my major concern about the recent public comments coming out of these interviews I've discussed relating to this new Trump investigation. Unlike my Democratic colleagues, I won't discuss the evidence publicly at this point in time. But let me remind the American public with a couple already public points. Did Trump fire Acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen? No, he did not fire him.
So Donald Trump, according to Chuck Grassley, has every right to counsel, to gather his sage advisors. Chuck Grassley is acting as though Donald Trump, making excuses, acting as though Donald Trump he's just floating ideas, as though he's talking about welfare reform or tax reform or the never-ending infrastructure week. A president of the United States who has raised his right hand and swore to uphold the Constitution, to faithfully execute his duties and support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, does not get to foment revolution, does not get to encourage and incite a frothing, violent mob to insurrection, to construct a gallows, a hangman's gallows on the lawn of the Capitol while chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." No, Senator Grassley, that is not how this works. To coin a commercial, that's not how any of this works. In lighter news, because it can't always be doom and gloom and anger and vitriol and resentment toward the other side and their anti-democracy. Remember this tweet from Elon Musk back in July 12th, 2021. Those who attack space maybe don't realize that space represents hope for so many people. Listen, say what you will about little Elon Musk. I have said a lot. I am not his biggest fan. I don't think he is an existential threat, though. This news is hilarious. Elon Musk to launch a satellite. How about this? Keep that in mind. Keep that tweet in mind as I read this story. That people who attack space maybe don't realize that space represents hope for so many people. Elon Musk to launch a satellite that will beam advertisements into space. The venture is a combined effort between Canadian technology startup Geometric Energy Corporation and SpaceX. So space doesn't just represent hope, it also represents advertising, which is hilarious because this is about as low-tech as it gets, it sounds. A Canadian technology startup will be partnering with Elon Musk's SpaceX to make space advertisements a thing of the future, according to a report by Business Insider. Samuel Reed, the CEO and co-founder of Geometric Energy Corporation, GEC, told the outlet that the company is working to create a satellite called CubeSat. Real cool. One side of the CubeSat will be used to promote ads, art, and logos. People and companies will be able to pay to place their ads there by buying pixels on the display screen with cryptocurrency. The GEC is planning on launching CubeSat into space via one of Musk's SpaceX Falcon 9 rockets, which will release it into orbit in space before the rocket heads to the moon. Big news. All right, here's where it gets just chef's kiss hilarious. Reed said, come on, man. Reed said a selfie stick will be attached to the CubeSat, filming the display screen and allowing people on Earth to watch it. Allowing people on Earth to watch it on a live stream through YouTube or Twitch. So if you thought this was going to be like a massive screen, like a billboard in space that you could see from Earth, it's not that. It's a selfie stick with a camera pointing back at it, and you're going to have to go to YouTube to actually witness the ads. So yeah, many people don't realize that space represents hope. Thanks for joining me, you guys. I'm Jesse Dollamore, sitting in for David Pakman. See you next time.
Thanks a lot for watching today's show. I just want to take a second to tell you about today's sponsors. Blinkist is the app that helps you become a more well-rounded person by letting you read or listen to an entire nonfiction book in just 15 minutes. You can try it for free and get 25% off a subscription by going to Blinkist.com/David Pakman.